There are tons of scary Pokemon in the franchise, but I want to find the scariest Pokemon that could be perfect in a horror movie. My name is Pokey, and this is which Pokemon would make the scariest horror movie. So here's the groundwork, right? So the entire premise is that the main horror villain would be a Pokemon, right? But which Pokemon would be so terrifying that it would break records for the horror genre itself? I'm talking overcoming It, Chucky, Shining, all those guys. Well, not only are we going to figure that out, but also find a good director, story writer, casting director, etc, etc. First off, here are the rules. Number one is that the Pokemon has to be one that is visually scary. So for example, a ghost type like Chandelure is not going to work for a horror movie villain. I'm sorry. Number two is that the personality of that Pokemon must be that of a true Pokemon horror villain, and they need to grasp the true villain aspect, and I will also be the main director of this film to make sure everything is up to par. And last but not least, we are not including legendaries and mythicals because of course Arceus would be the best role for a horror villain, and so would Pokemon like Darkrai, so I want to look into the basic 1000 Pokemon. So without further ado, let's get started with our search, shall we? So first off, let's narrow down our horror movie cast director, which is honestly a very easy choice. It would be none other than Gardevoir. Gardevoir would make for an amazing cast director because she would know which human actors would be perfect for the movie because, you know, she can understand human emotions. And on top of all that, she is also incredibly smart as she can resonate with everyone on set, so she would be a phenomenal cast director. Of course, there are some other great options like Indeedee and other psychic type Pokemon who are more than smart enough to be a cast director, but one thing that gives Gardevoir the edge is that she understands human emotions to an insane level. So yeah, he'll be able to easily resonate with a lot of the actors on set, so that would be perfect. So now that we have our cast director, we now need our film's co-director. This one is incredibly easy, it's Lucario. Now hang on, let me explain, alright? Lucario is one of the only Pokemon who can actually understand human speech. So not only would he be able to sense how everyone is feeling during the film's production, but also communicate with them through his power of aura. So him and Gardevoir would be such a perfect match in shaping this movie's vision. So Lucario would be our film's co-director purely because his powers just fit so well for this whole thing, and I would love to have someone who can actually understand what I'm saying and help me turn my vision for the film into reality. So Lucario, welcome to the team, man. Now we need our film story writer, and this one is a very important piece of the pie. I need someone who can help me cook up the most peak story the horror genre has ever seen. And that role would have to go to someone so smart, so intelligent that could cook up pure perfection, and of course, you already know the answer. It's Alakazam. Arguably the most intelligent Pokemon in the entire Pokemon franchise. I don't know who could possibly make a better story than the smartest Pokemon alive, bro. His intelligence could help him easily reach Christopher Nolan level performance. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to get our main horror movie Pokemon villain. So let's start by narrowing down our search, shall we? But before we continue, if you do enjoy these hypothetical Pokemon videos, make sure to subscribe as I make a lot of these videos such as which Pokemon would be the best babysitter. But anyways, back to the video, and thank you so much for watching, friends. It means a lot. But throughout making this video, I had a couple of ideas for which Pokemon would make the best Pokemon horror villain. The first being on the thumbnail of this video, Malamar. Malamar ends up doing a bunch of heinous crimes, including controlling the XY crew during the Pokemon XY series, and is overall a very terrifying Pokemon, especially with the sounds bro makes. Just imagine getting chased down by this thing in a hallway, but I felt like Malamar could also be seen the other way. While some people might find him scary, his design can also be seen as derpy and stupid, so he was scrapped from being chosen. Then I went towards a Pokemon who is legit meant to be terrifying, that being Trevenant. There is just something so terrifying about a tree-based monster, especially considering that a forest at night with mist is such a horror setting, and adding a tree monster to the mix not knowing which one is the real tree would be an insane movie. I'm just saying the chase sequences would be crazy. But ultimately, I think we could find something better, just because I think that although it'd be cool, it would be kind of rough to make an interesting plot around a horror villain that is just a scary tree. But that being said, I still think Trevenant is a really good answer considering that it would add a whole different layer to, you know, the horror genre. It would just be something different is what I'm trying to say. And then we also have a couple of honorable mentions, such as Drifloon, who, if you have read anything about his dex entry, then you would obviously know what I'm talking about. And of course Hypno, who just looks terrifying, and his personality would also match that of a horror movie villain. And honestly, I was really leaning towards Hypno until I realized I forgot a Pokemon so terrifying its visual appearance kills people. That Pokemon is none other than Mimikyu. Now here's the thing, right? Although Mimikyu would make for a perfect movie horror villain, as it is a literal doll dressed up as Pikachu, its appearance is also so terrifying that it legit kills people out of fear and bad omens. And I don't want to hear any of that crap where Meowth ended up fine, because that is just an outlier since the anime obviously can't show death like that on screen, so he was just left scarred. Realistically, Mimikyu would be that terrifying. Now a real question is how terrifying, because I want to know what's under that cloth, but you know, my common sense skills are, you know, tingling and saying, yeah, that might not be what I really want. But I'm just saying, I would like to know. And what's so perfect about Mimikyu is that its real appearance could be a mystery throughout the film. Similar to the film Bird Box, where the true monster is so terrifying that people just go insane and end up losing their lives. So Mimikyu could be the perfect mix of two of the best horror films ever, that being Bird Box and Annabelle, since Mimikyu is essentially a doll. But then there's a tiny small issue about Mimikyu being our main horror movie villain. That being, he could legit kill people. And I'm obviously talking about the audience here. So bear with me, right? If Mimikyu's appearance stays anonymous, then the audience would be safe, right? But in the future, if you want to show Mimikyu's real appearance, that would probably kill people through the cinema screen. But if we play it out like Bird Box, then we wouldn't have to worry about that problem now, would we? Because we could just pretend that Mimikyu's real appearance is being shown when in reality, it actually isn't. And I'm drawing a lot of inspiration from Bird Box because I feel like that film is just so good with the concept of the, horror villain just being something you can't see, and Mimikyu just fits that perfectly. So Mimikyu would be our choice for a horror movie Pokemon villain. Now, of course, I didn't forget about Gengar, right? And I genuinely believe that Gengar would also be amazing at the role, probably my second option. But the idea of a doll and its fearsome secret appearance just screams success more than a ghost in my opinion. Not saying Gengar wouldn't fit, but I'm just thinking that Mimikyu could be better. Now, I wanted to address another Pokemon that could have fit the role, which is Banette. Now, Banette's entire story arc could actually be its very own movie. So essentially, Banette's story was originally a pitiful plush doll that was thrown away by its owner. And it generated over time cursed energy, no, not that cursed energy, and it became an evil spirit. So essentially, Banette's story would be a horror version of Toy Story. And I love horror movies, right? And my favorite horror character is Annabelle. So I thought, wow, Banette could definitely fit as a horror movie villain. But then I realized that Mimikyu is basically that, but just 100 times better. And I know there was a ton of other Pokemon I could have chosen, but I just felt that Mimikyu was just the one. But that being said, would this be a movie worth watching for you? Does a Pokemon horror movie sound intriguing? Let me know in the comments. But what do you guys think? Do you think Mimikyu is perfect for the role, or do you guys have another Pokemon in mind? Let me know in the comment section below, as I do read a lot of my comments. But that's all Yuki wrote, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.